We all know that conservation efforts take a long time with many years of study and lots of elaborate planning. But is this always and necessarily true? Won't it be good to have this knowledge challenged and learn something new today? Dr. Shirish Manchi of SACON is going to narrate a fantastic story about the conservation of Narcondam hornbills found on that small island. The story goes on to show that with proper study and focused intervention, conservation is possible in shorter time durations as well. Let's hear the story.
Hi everyone, this is Shirish from SACOM, and I hope everybody is safe at their home. And this is a program we thought we will share some of the stories with you. And I am here to share a story, a conservation story of a very special bird species, which is called Narcondam hornbill. We all may be knowing about the hornbills generally. Why I say this is a special species? Because it is an endemic species which has a very restricted range. What do you mean by restricted range? You won't believe this species is found only on a single small island called Narcondam Island in North Andaman Islands, and the size of this island is just 6.8 square kilometers, and this species is found only on that single island and nowhere else in the world, and that's why it has its own importance. And because it is found only on one island and has a restricted population, it is included in the endangered list of the IUCN Red List, and also is protected in a Schedule 1 by Wildlife Protection Act. So generally about hornbills, we know that they are cavity nesting birds. Most of you know, most of you may be knowing about it, and they nest in the hollow trees. They breed in hollow trees, uh, and they are known frugivores. They eat fruits, but when they are breeding, because of the high requirement of the protein by the female and also the chicks, they also during breeding feed on insects and other reptiles. So if I talk generally about the Narcondam Island where the species is found, you can see on the screen it's a single island which goes up to 706 meters of height in altitude. And you can see in the map that there is a line here. That is because the southern part of this island is quite inaccessible. So we could not do much study there, but yeah, northern part we could explore completely during the study. And this is an Narcondam Island, which is isolated from the Andaman Islands. And what is the so much special about this? See, there are, because of the isolation of the island, very few studies are done on this species. Very restricted, very limited studies. Though there were some visits during late 1800 and early and late 1900 years, there were some scientists who visited the Narcondam Island. People from BNHS like Dr. Abdul Ali and Hussein, they also visited these islands and recorded the presence of the species. But their visit mainly was for the collection of the specimens. So they could not conduct any systematic study of the species. However, the first systematic study was conducted by Dr. Ravi Shankaran, who was he was a former director of SACON. So SACON conducted the first study. And why I want to share this study, what is unique about this conservation work is, this study actually shows that you need not have to have a very long-term studies to do conservation all the time. there are some species, there are some studies, small studies, which can contribute in a very significant way towards conservation of the species. And this is one of the study which I believe is a best example to tell people that you can contribute a lot for conservation through a small studies, well planned small studies. So what happened is, when Dr. Ravi Shankaran in 1999, he planned to do this study. It was only 5 to 6 months of study, and he went with the focus to do a population assessment and to understand the threats to the species. And he went on the island. He was there on the island for 4 to 5 months, and estimated the population around 360 to 380 individuals. And then there were another two studies subsequently, which were again very limited studies, but this was more significantly because it came up with certain threats to the species along with its population. And those threats were like introduced goats and deforestation going on the island and hunting going on the island, plus the proposed helipad. Now we'll just look into the details of these threats. What were these threats? How introduced goats can be a threat to a hornbill species. So basically, since the location of this island is on a close to the international borders, close to Burma, it is very important to have some protection of the island for the Indian government. So what the government thought, they will set up a police lookout post on this island. Since the island is uninhabited, it was very important to have some defense mechanism there. And that's why the police lookout post was, as you can see on the screen, it was set up in 1968. And then, since the island is in a Bay of Bengal, where we get a lot of harsh weather most of the time of the year, and most of these island people are very much attracted towards having the non-veg meals. So they were allowed to take a pairs of goats with them to fulfill the meat requirement. Because most of the time of the year, whenever there are rains and the harsh weather, it's very difficult to go for fishing. So actually the thing is, people were not told to how to maintain these goats within the railings. So what happened is, the population started growing up, and then it was very difficult to maintain them within the railings. Then the goats started going in the forest, which later on became feral population. And these feral populations were then browsing on the saplings of the trees. And as you know that the regeneration in tropical evergreen forest naturally is very slow. And because of this introduced goats, as per Ravi Shankaran's report, he says that there was almost no ground vegetation. The ground was very clear and soil was completely exposed. So it is a very dangerous situation for places like this, where you get high winds, high rainfalls, and many cyclonic events. Because during these times, most of the large trees, they die. And because of low regeneration, most of the new trees don't come up, and which is a very sad situation for the hornbills. So these are just details, like when Dr. Ravi Shankaran was there, he observed that these people were restricted to eat goats. Though they were taken with them, there were some rules, like you can eat only one goat in a week, sort of a things. And you know, the goats, they multiply very fast. And killing the feral goats was very difficult. So the population of the goats kept on increasing, and because it's an isolated place, it's in the middle of the sea, the predators for goats are also very less. It's only monitor lizard which used to eat the newborns. So restricting the population of the feral goats was very difficult. Then the other threats which were identified was deforestation. Generally, because these people used to stay in the forest in inaccessible places, so they used to cut the green trees and allow them to dry, and they used to use it for the firewood purpose. And then also because they may be getting very bored eating the same goat meat all the time, they were also seen hunting Narcondam hornbills on the island. And there was a helipad to be operated during the emergency situations, which was decided to make a permanent helipad. So the problem was, if this helipad becomes permanent, then because of the arrival and departure of the helicopters, the sound it makes and the trauma it creates can really be harmful to these hornbills. That's why it was identified as one of the threats. So looking at all these threats, what was suggested was to remove the goats from the island and provide the LPG cylinders to the police personnel for their cooking purposes, and advocate for no hunting of the hornbills, and if possible reduce the police personnel on the island, and the helipad should not be made full-fledged. So these were the simple, like on paper they look very simple recommendations, but when you talk about conservation and the conservation recommendations, rarely you see something gets implemented. And that's what makes this particular story very different. And this was a style of working of Dr. Ravi Shankaran, who is known as one of the best conservationists we had in the country now. So what management actions were taken after these are very significant. What generally we scientists do is we give our recommendations and then we forget about the issue. And we think that somebody else will come and do the implementation of it. But what we believe is like when you identify the problem, when you give the recommendations, it's very important that you get involved in implementation of these recommendations and also advocate them. So what Dr. Ravi Shankaran did at that time, he communicated with the local managers, the local forest department, and the other departments, and the forest department helped him to reach to the other departments, and there was a communication. And you won't believe, within a year of time after recommendations, 400 goats were removed from that island. And this was one of the biggest management action done during this program. And then the LPG cylinders were also provided for cooking by the police department to the police personnel. And when I was there for my further studies, I was just casually talking to these policemen, and they were saying we don't hunt hornbills now and all. Then I was little skeptical about it. Then I said, why you don't hunt now? Or you are just telling me that because I am here and because I am a scientist? Then he was like, no, once what happened, one of our colleagues had killed a hornbill, and during that batch, whoever was there, one of them actually complained it to the IG Forest, and IG Forest suspended him without any further inquiries, because the moment he got the news that he has killed Narcondam hornbill, he took an action on it, which I believe is very positive as a conservationist. And that really made that really put a stop on the hornbill hunting on the island. And then also the plan of the permanent helipad there was dropped. So these were like very important management actions taken when after a small 5 months of the study. Now we will see what happened because of these management actions. Were they positive or were they negative? What had happened? So what happened is, this was happened in 99 2000, and after that there were two small surveys were done, and then during 2010 there was a parliament question came to SACON for answer that what government of India is doing for the conservation of Narcondam hornbill. And since I was working on my edibleness swiftlet program in Andamans, and Dr. Ravi Shankaran passed away in 2009, the query came to me from my officials, and they said, "Can we answer this? We have to answer this, and you please help us." So I looked into the details, then I found that there are no recent studies done. We really don't know what is happening with the species, how the species is doing after the management actions. So I could not really give any firm answer to the question came from Parliament, but then I suggested them that it is now very important for us to understand what's the present scenario of the species after the management action was done, because we have zero idea about it. And then MOF funded a small project to SACON. They have asked me to conduct a survey and find out what is a present situation. And as per as accordingly the proposal was made, and I focused mainly on understanding a present population scenario and also the present threats to the species and what has happened after the management actions taken after the previous study. So then I designed accordingly. I followed some of the scientific methods. I'll not just go into it much because they are more technical. Then I using a foolproof scientific method, I try to estimate population of these hornbills and also look into their distribution. Then, because the goats were a big problem to the regeneration of the forest, I wanted to know the what is the current scenario of the forest present there and the forest structure and what is happening to regeneration. So that's why I did some vegetation studies, and I also wanted to know like what is the population of feral goats there now, because they are one of the threats. So I try to do it through a visual encounter method. Like whenever I'm in the forest, I used to look for the direct and indirect signs for the of the goats, and do informal discussion with police personnel if they have seen the goats, when they have seen, how many they have seen, sort of a thing. So which gives a fairly good idea about it. And after doing this, when I finished the analysis and all, then I really got amazed, and the outcomes were like really noteworthy. So what I'll do is I'll first go through some of the ecological things what we have seen, especially about the regeneration of the forest. And when I looked at it, we got a inverse J-shaped curve, which is in botany, they say that the inverse J-shaped curve is a typical regeneration structure for the tropical evergreen forest. And we have got that. So I was very happy that the regeneration pattern of this forest is doing perfectly normal. And I also look for the stem density, which was a very high. Then I also look for the goat population, but I did not get any direct or indirect signs of feral goats, which was like I would say is a amazing thing, because across the world people are trying to eliminate goats, feral goats or feral antelopes from the wild, and they don't get a success. Then how come these goats are gone? Maybe because of limited resources, because there is only one freshwater source, and there is no other freshwater source on the island, and maybe because of the limited resources available. I cannot comment much on that aspect right now, but for me the good news was there is no direct or indirect signs of any feral goats on the island. And this may be because the goats were removed, and this may be because after the goats were removed, whatever goats were available there, police personnel were asked to kill them and eat if they can. So I don't know what has happened, but then there are no goats right now, which is a very good sign. And understanding about hunting of hornbills, when I was talking to the police personnel, they all told me that they don't hunt and they're restricted because of the forest department or because of the police people, police higher officials who told them not to kill it because it's in the Schedule 1 of Wildlife Protection Act. So I thought, how should I believe them? So sometimes what happens is the behavior of these animals actually gives us idea that what is happening with them. So when I was searching for the nest of Narcondam hornbill, it was amazing to see the nest of the hornbill at less than 2 meters height. It is just 6 feet height, 5 to 6 feet height. You can see in a picture here, it is just 5 to 6 feet height. It is at my height. The active nest. There was a female inside, there were chicks inside. And the another picture you see where the hornbill nest is at height, but it is right above the police camp. So the birds were active there because nobody was disturbing them. And I took it as a positive sign, which indicates that these birds are not getting disturbed by the police personnel there because they are highly active around the police camp. So that way I believe the thing is gone, the poaching is not happening. So now what is the present scenario of the threats which were identified by Ravi Shankaran in 1999? So that is, right now there are no direct or indirect evidences of boats on the island, no evidence of deforestation because LPG is given to the people to cook. There are no hunting observed, and also helipad is not operational. So what has happened with this is, and another thing which was suggested was to reduce police personnel on the island. This was not taken up very seriously because of the national defense priorities. So the number of police personnel did not reduce, but then because the hunting and deforestation and these things are reduced, I don't think actually it matters how many people are there if they're not disturbing the habitat. So, and this was the outcome of the efforts. If you look into the population of 2013, which was observed by me, it's huge. It's more than three-folds. We are around more than 1400 birds there right now within a 6.8 square kilometer of the island with the density of 190 birds per square kilometer, which may be the highest population of any hornbill, highest density of any hornbill populations in the world. So it's kind of an achievement of recovery of an endangered species, which was done just with 5 months of small study, focus study. This is what is very important. This is what very important for us to understand, that you need not always have 5 years of study. You need not always have long-term studies to do a conservation. You can do the studies, but simultaneously you can take the conservation efforts, which will give you immediate results. So the present scenario distribution is as it was seen earlier. Most of the population is in the mid altitude regions of the island, and they are distributed all over. They are breeding all over the island. Most of the places wherever we surveyed, we saw that they're breeding there. Then another important thing is, as the regeneration has come up normal, maybe many plant species, tree species, they must have come to their normal populations. And if you look into this table, the food preference of Narcondam hornbill has changed over the years. I won't say this is very surprising because hornbills are known to be very opportunistic. Hornbills are known to eat whatever is available, and the availability is mainly dependent on the phenology of the trees, like which tree fruits which year, which tree fruits more in which year. That will be the more consumed food for the hornbills. That's what is, because the hornbills are believed to be opportunistic. So, but then what I see is there are some species which were not recorded as their food earlier, like Carinium Euphyllum, which is now the dominant food of the hornbills during 2012 and 2013. So it may be because of the availability, but then yeah, that is a new thing. And also Aglaya andamanica, which is again an endemic species, that also got included in the list of food items of Narcondam hornbill. So these were some of the highlights about their food. And then what we see, the current situation of threats is all natural. Like the island is isolated, the birds isolated, so any disease for the birds can cause complete elimination of the population because it is a single population. And also the island is a dormant volcano which was active more than 120 years back, and now it is dormant. So and we have examples from across the world that the dormant volcanoes, when they reactivate, they are very dangerous, they can be very disastrous. And also the natural tree falling happening there is huge because of the cyclonic and harsh weathers, and the natural predation which is very less. We have seen just monitor lizard making one attempt of the hunting the nest, and these are the current situations. So depending on this we gave a recommendation that we need to have a periodic monitoring of the species and avoid any developmental activities on the island. And surprisingly, you won't see it very commonly, but I gave a recommendation saying that no conservation action is required. It may surprise most of you because generally you don't see such recommendations, but my understanding is when the species is already isolated, it's doing really good without any interference from human, then we need not really take up any conservation action, because that conservation action itself may become an intervention for the survival of the species. So this actually created a lot of problems because I said no conservation action required. Then even some people who were for the conservation, they said how you can say that it is an endangered species, it's a schedule 1 species, we have to protect it, we have to do something for it. Then my explanation is very simple. See, when a system is working really good on its own, why we should interfere into it? When the system doesn't need our interference, why we should go for it? In fact, we should look for some other systems which need our attention, our resources, our money and time, and it's more logical to spend all of that there. So sometimes it is really good to do no conservation action. So this is one of the case I believe is the best example. But then yeah, definitely since we have a very high dense population in a very small area which has come from a very small population, I would love to take up a further studies to look into a population genetics to see if the population is going through a bottleneck. And since the species is found only on a single island and it's a dormant volcano, it's an isolated place, it will be very important for us to have a stock population in captivity. So in case if something happens to this population on this island, we'll have some representative population which can be reintroduced for regeneration of the population of this endangered species. So this whole study was done with the funding from the MOEFCC, and I thank Department of Environment, Forest, Andaman Nicobar Islands. I could not have done this without the assistance of Justin Sumit Kumar, who was my field assistant and who was my great colleague and friend during this study, and he's working with me from decades. He was also working with me on other projects like Andaman serpent eagle studies and edible nest reptile conservation. So one of the best field assistant, I would rank him in the Andaman Islands for the study of birds. Then Akshaya Mane, who was working with me, who helped me during the initial part of the work to do the survey. And then the police department of Andaman Nicobar Islands, who gave me all the facilities to the island, and coast guards who helped me to reach to the island and come out from the island during the study. And I hope you people have enjoyed this talk. I thank all of you. I thank Fern for giving me this opportunity. I thank Seema and Subodh for the opportunity they have given to me. And I request all of you, please be at home, enjoy such talks, and be safe, and help everyone, help Government of India to fight with coronavirus. Thank you very much.